just bursting onto the scene and being incredible. And Mikel sort of said, well, look at how much they give him the ball. That tells you in itself how much they trust him, how much they believe he belongs there, and all the rest of it. So, yeah, great to hear. Let's talk a little bit about Noni Madueke. Obviously, made his Arsenal debut yesterday. Came on for the last 20 minutes or so, if that, 15-ish minutes. And he came on the left wing. And in the press conference after the match, I asked Mikel Arteta whether he thought that was the space for Madueke. Like, what was his plan for Noni Madueke positionally? Because we've been going back and forth as a fan base. Is he going to be on the left? Is he going to play on the right? Is he going to be back up to Saka? Is he going to be taking over from Trossard or Martinelli? And Arteta said both. Like, he wants him to be available and utilized on both sides. And that, I'd imagine, was probably part of the appeal of signing him. Rather than going and spending money on two players, I think Arsenal were probably a little bit happier to spend what, in my opinion, was a little bit more to get this guy that could play on both sides. And it speaks to Mikel Arteta's history as well, where, you know, he prioritizes versatility quite a bit. What did you make of Noni's performance? Did you see anything that gave you encouragement there? What did you make of him sort of from the left? Because I don't know about you, but I'm used to seeing him playing from the right.
I'm like you. I'm used to seeing him playing on the right. I do prefer I guess because of angle bias, I do prefer left footers on the right hand side. And I know what you said there with Mikel Arteta. He does plan on utilizing him on both sides, and it makes sense. Naturally, that's going to be a pill. That's a long season. But if we're very honest with ourselves and forgetting all the rumors that we hear about Eze and Rodrigo, if we're honest with ourselves and we look at the players available, if Madueke was to start 5 to 10 games, it probably would be on the left hand side. The right hand side is Saka's, and if anything, it's Max Dowman's, who is very young. So let's just say it's Saka's. The left-hand side is open season, give or take, with Trossard, Martinelli, and Madueke. I don't think you could draw too much conclusions from Madueke in his 20 minutes. I mean, big him up because he did want to join us in Asia. Rightly so, the club say you need a break. I don't feel you can draw too many conclusions. I mean, it weren't the best of penalties. I'm kind of more open to having a left footer on the left-hand side just because he can run at his man. It's more the skill set I like with Madueke, but I'll be honest, Harry, I don't think there was anything really to draw any conclusions about Madueke. I don't think I looked at him for, wow, like we've got a genuine option out there. It's almost wait and see mode. And generally, where I look at Gyökeres, kind of piggybacking of what you said earlier about, you know, Gyökeres might not started and we don't know if he starts against Man United. I don't think Madueke starts against Man United because you got one more preseason game. He ain't been training with the boys in Asia. It's probably going to be Martinelli off the left-hand side, but it's a different option. But I don't think I can draw any conclusions yet, Harry, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to draw any sort of definitive conclusions based on sort of yesterday's performance. There were a couple of encouraging moments where he sort of took his man on the outside, being on that left flank, and delivered decent crosses into the box. And again, you know, I know he doesn't score that many headed goals when you look at the numbers, but you know, when you got a big unit like Victor Gyökeres up front, you know, you'd hope that would benefit him. And I think that was something different for us. So again, not going to draw too many conclusions on Noni Madueke himself, but it was interesting tactically, I think, to see us play with a left-footed player on the left-hand side. And I agree with you that generally nowadays, when sort of wingers are required to score goals and come inside and join in the play the way they are, I think it's important to be on your wrong side, if you like. But I think sometimes we've missed that ability to take people on the outside, have a bit of variety to our game and get those balls in. Yeah, and whip those deliveries in. And Arteta kind of highlighted that in response to my question. He said, you saw some of the quality of the deliveries that he put in when he went on the outside. So it's something different, isn't it? You wouldn't back Martinelli to get to the byline and cross with his left foot. He normally starts to carry it along the byline and then tries to cut it back with the right foot. So, but in that time, you know, you give the opposition to get back and to kind of marshal their box. Whereas if with a quick bit of skill, which we know Madueke's got, by the way, when he's sharp and fit, you can beat the man and deliver in early. Sometimes that can be the difference. So, yeah, I mean, again, look, we talked about it, didn't we, before when the signing was first being talked about. This wasn't one I was massively excited about. This isn't a deal if I were in charge of Arsenal, I'd have done. But he is an Arsenal player now. He does bring us something a little bit different tactically. Let's get behind him. Let's support him and see what comes of it. we talked a little bit about the midfield earlier on and the maybe imbalance in some of the midfield combinations that we've seen over the course of pre-season so far. Do you agree with what I said earlier that it is Zubimendi, Rice, and Odegaard that has to be the midfield for Arsenal? And if so, are you satisfied with that? Are you cool with that? Do you think that's going to work for us?
That has to be, and I do think it will work. I do think Zubimendi, you're going to see a lot more from Zubimendi than we traditionally expect. And I think you look at, I know they're two different midfielders or two different sorts of sixes at the point of entry to our club with Rice and Zubimendi. But Rice has kind of added more facets and aspects to his game. I think Zubimendi will do that. I wouldn't describe Zubimendi as a creative midfielder, but I do think he can contribute to all phases, especially in the attacking third. I mean, unless we're going to go and buy, some game changer, Tony Kroos regen, it has to be Rice, Zubimendi, and Odegaard. Now, with Odegaard, I'm going to need you to obviously get back to it. I do need Mikel Arteta to, I don't know about anyone else, but it feels like with that midfield three, with Myles Lewis-Skelly inverting, with us being on the front foot of games, I feel there's so much we could do tactically. I think there's more movement centrally and out wide. I feel there could be more rotations. I think we could be more devastating and penetrative from central regions. I think there's so much more we could do, really. And I guess Arteta is just going to have to inject some life. But to answer your question, the 100% that has to be our midfield three. It has to be. Especially going back to what you said, if you want to see Gyökeres thrive or have any aspect of that, that has to be it. It has to be it.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, on that midfield trio, though, I do think for it to work, we have to make a tactical adjustment. I really do. I don't think you can play that three in the same way and shape that we used to play the Partey, Rice, and Odegaard midfield. And what I mean by that is I don't think you can play this with 1-6 being Zubimendi and 2 8s in Rice and Odegaard. I don't think it works.
PSG do, man.
Yeah, I just don't think it works. I think we need to adjust it. For me personally, it would be the two sort of players playing as a double pivot, Rice and Zubimendi, a little bit closer to one another. And then I'd take the leash off of Odegaard. Because I feel like the system that we play with now, where we got the 2 8s and Odegaard is very much the right-sided 8, he's literally, I know he's left-footed and he probably naturally wants to go that way anyway, but he's restricted to having to operate in that triangle with White and Saka all the time. Whereas if you gave him a little bit more license and, you did that knowing that Rice and Zubimendi are going to look after one another in the middle of the park as a kind of duo, because I think Rice is better suited to that. Rice is an all-round midfielder. He's not a DM for us in that I don't think he progresses the ball well enough with his passing, but I don't think he's a 10 either. And it feels like when he's playing as an 8, it's almost like he's actually playing as a 10. And I don't really like that. I think he needs to find that middle ground for us to get the absolute maximum out of Rice. He's a good player wherever he plays because he's that good. But I think that's what I would do. I'd have Rice and Zubimendi as a kind of double pivot, and I'd let Odegaard roam. Go out on the right and combine with Saka and White. Then drift out to the left on occasions and combine with Martinelli and combine with Gyökeres, and combine with Myles Lewis-Skelly. And if you do that, maybe you help us to unlock that left-hand side a little bit where we're struggling at the moment. So, yeah, I think with an adjustment, it can work. What have you made of the defensive fragility that we've seen during pre-season? Is that a concern for you?
Harry, 100% it is a concern, man, because give or take, and I know it's, people can say the same old kind of things about it's pre-season, it's been other players getting minutes, it's been disjointed, it's been great, but ultimately football's decided at both ends. Fair enough, in an attacking sense, we're kind of having to try something brand new, but defending has been our bread and butter. We're one of the best teams in the Premier League and in Europe at that, and I know there's been injuries, but for me, it's the lack of focus. It's the catalogue of errors like yesterday. I'm not here to necessarily blame one individual player, but it's a catalogue of errors consistently. Like the 3 goals we conceded yesterday, Arteta is not going to be happy. Fair enough, Raya and Myles Lewis-Skelly made a mistake, or the ref, but there's that. I think it's more the level of concentration in our team, which then leads me to ask as well. It's that I don't think we ask ourselves, how do the players feel mentally? Like, how are you going into the season? And what I mean by that is, obviously, if you were to ask me in a press conference, you're going to give me the standard answer. It's okay to have doubt. It's another thing if you let doubt, succumb to doubt. How are they feeling? Because is it a lack of focus? Is it nerves? Do they feel everything's a bit stale? Do they need something new to kind of get behind? Because it's not just our defenders, you know. I kind of started to worry about us defensively going back to, do you remember the first, give or take 10, 20 minutes against Newcastle when they were cutting us open on the transition? I don't know if it's tactical or whatnot, but I do think the players are struggling mentally, and I do think that is putting into our lack of focus. Like even David Raya, I'm not trying to create a pylon period, and you know your keeper's your last line of defense, so you need to ask questions of the outfield players way before you ask a question of Raya. But yeah, like it does feel like there's an issue there. Are we trying something new and there's teething problems? Is it just one of those things? And I must admit, generally, I do think there's an air of complacency, because against Villarreal, I'm not accusing players of not caring or whatnot, but there was times that in the Premier League, if you lost the ball, you have to kill yourself to go win that ball back. There was kind of like too much of you've lost the ball, you're looking to the sky. It's kind of pre-season, and I kind of have felt that during this pre-season period so far, Harry, man. So yeah, we need to get back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't disagree with you. We'll come on to people's questions in a minute. If you've got questions, get them in the live chat. Put a little cue at the beginning. It just helps me pick them out from the rest of the comments. If you've already sent one in earlier in the show, I'm actually looking out for them now. So do it again, and we'll work our way through as many of those as we possibly can. In terms of us being vulnerable on the transition during pre-season, I don't want to say this because I love him, but I feel like Myles Lewis-Skelly's partly responsible. And I'm worried that Myles Lewis-Skelly is going to be found out a little bit in the new season. I think I don't read into the defensive stuff too much, because I know that we can be a very good defensive team. I think I read more into the kind of why haven't we been doing it offensively thing, because that is a hangover that I have from last season in terms of worry and concern. But I feel like I've got a little bit of an issue with Myles Lewis-Skelly. And again, look, I don't want to be too harsh. It's preseason. He's a young lad. He's developing, all the rest of it. You know, you'd even argue that he's not actually a left fullback. But I think sometimes, right, and I know that he's tactically tasked with going inside. I don't mind him going inside. But you remember when Zinchenko used to go inside? He used to go inside and get on the ball and then play the ball. And he used to pass it and progress it. And because he would do that quite early, we were a really good attack inside. That combination where he used to come inside and then Xhaka would go outside, and then that would open the door for like Martinelli to make a diagonal run in field, and we'd be able to find him via Zinchenko because we had that passing range from deep. I think we've lost that a little bit. Now, Zinchenko defensively is not it, and I know that. And I'm not suggesting for a second that he should play. But I feel like in Myles Lewis-Skelly, we got something different. We've got someone who carries the ball and dribbles. And I feel, and correct me if you think I'm wrong on this, I feel like he goes on these wanders with the ball at his feet at times, and he runs into brick walls essentially, and relies on the fact that he's got a good frame and he's going to put his body in between himself and the defender, and he's going to win a foul. Let me tell you this, those fouls are not always going to come. The smarter players are not going to foul you. And in the age of VAR, where the referees are probably quite happy for the play to continue, see how it develops, and then maybe go back and check on VAR, we could be found out with Myles Lewis-Skelly drifting infield with the ball at his feet all the time. I think he does run into trouble. And I think that that's been a big part of the reason why we've been vulnerable on transitions, because of him, but also because if you don't have big Gabby behind him that can come across and clean up, and you're asking Kivior to do that, who probably doesn't do that as comfortably, I think it gives us a problem. Is that fair?
I think it's natural, man. I think some of it is collectively on the whole team, and some of it's on Myles Lewis-Skelly. I think like we've played like this for a while. Teams have kind of clocked us. They know that we trust Myles Lewis-Skelly, and it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Like players have strengths and weaknesses. They know he's going to gamble, he's going to shield, he's going to drive. So if you nick the ball off him, as you said, especially if Magalhaes isn't there, or those players that are good on the transition, defensive transition, we're going to get exploited. I think that's naturally where Myles Lewis-Skelly has to learn. You have to learn, you know, when to give and go, when to maybe play as a traditional fullback, when to go on those marauding runs forward. And I guess that's the double-edged sword of his quality and his confidence in that. We're always asking him to do that. And I think you're bang on the money, because if you go back to, I can't for the life of me remember the game. If you remember when he made his debut, or the first couple of cup games when he was getting in the first team, We conceded a goal kind of at the Emirates against Bolton or whoever it was because of that. If you remember Liverpool last season, it was because of that. We need to be better collectively on the transition. But I would also say for him individually, he's got to work at that. And Mikel Arteta, because some players are going to have that. To use Zinchenko as an example, we knew he was never, not to, negate the fact that he needs to improve defensively. We knew that he was never going to be anything to scream and shout about defensively. It's a bit like Trent, innit? He's never going to be that great defensively. But what he gives you in the middle and final third kind of increases that, and you build around him to make sure them kind of things are not exploited. You are right though, because naturally this team's been together for a while. You know what certain pockets Odegaard's going to take on the field. You kind of know what Saka is going to do. You know what Myles Lewis-Skelly is going to do. Even in the second half when we kind of promoted him to be a bit more adventurous and he was really kind of close to Zubimendi, I think a lot of that is down to Lewis-Skelly or any individual. But that's what I mean, Harry, and that this double-edged sword that's got us to this point of being second, playing this brand of football. We need to evolve and adapt and play new kind of ways. This is where I think I said it on your platform the last time I was here. I know it's not a priority per se, but I wouldn't be against another left back just because, as great as Myles Lewis-Skelly is, and he is first choice for me, we're looking at 38 games on paper, maybe 50, 60, to which many people would say, oh, yeah, Calafiori. Now, I love Calafiori, but if I was a betting man, God forbid, but I can't bet that you're going to stay fit. And then if Calafiori is not an option, if something's going on with Myles Lewis-Skelly, now you're looking at Timber. Now, if that was, God forbid, if that was happening today, Timber's not fully fit. So now you're looking at, does Kivior go over there? And then it's just square pegs in round holes kind of thing. So I think, in short, for Myles Lewis-Skelly, just to know when to keep it simpler. But these are things I expect of an 18-year-old. And the pros outweigh the cons, innit? But it is evident. It is evident.
Yeah, and I just wonder if we are to go down the route that I've suggested, and I'm not saying for a second that Mikel Arteta would listen to me or even think the same as me, but if you were to go down that route of like using Declan Rice as a bit more of a sort of central midfielder rather than an attacking midfielder, I'm not sure that there's much room if he plays alongside Zubimendi for Myles Lewis-Skelly to tuck in the way he does.
So we'll go for it though, man. Total control.
Yeah, agreed. But
you are right. We would need width.
Yeah, we need a bit of width, wouldn't we? And I do wonder if, we talked about the evolution of this team, and at times we've seen great evolution. Other times we've seen us maybe hold on to certain principles a little bit too long. Has the principle of the inverting fullback, and it maybe take it away from Myles Lewis-Skelly for a minute and make it about that position on the whole, is that something that we need to move on past?
If we're not going to move, go on.
I was just going to say, because if we keep talking about not being able to break teams down, and we keep talking about a lack of width, and we talk about our wingers that keep wanting to go inside because we're playing right footers on the left and left footers on the right, is there not an argument and a case that you utilize your fullbacks to give you that width?
Yeah.
And, if you're sending Myles Lewis-Skelly on these sort of random missions, into different areas of the pitch where he could be caught out defensively because he's not in his starting position, why not send him into that area of the pitch where he can do something on the outside? He might not necessarily be the best suited player for that, but my point is it time that we sort of consider moving on from the inverted fullback thing and doing something different?
I think it's time to evolve. Like, I wouldn't want to go away from it. We've got the capacity to do it, but like, we all know typically 9 times out of 10, if we assume everybody's fit for every game, we all know you're going to invert off that left-hand side rather than the right for whatever reason. That is what Mikel Arteta is going to do. Can we do it off the right? Can we actually just go back to playing as traditional fullbacks? We kind of need to evolve. Like, I know I'm going a bit crazy with this, but for me, I just think we need to evolve. Like, there's times where I'd always feel, to a degree, you need positions, you need structure and stuff. But these players have been together for a while. They're all good players. They're all intelligent. I might be a centre mid, but if my left back has, like in Lewis-Skelly's case, is bombed into midfield or he's ran and the width of the left-hand side, I might know if I'm Declan Rice, I'm playing as an 8, but common sense, the space has been vacated. Let me go over there. Kind of what you see with Paris Saint-Germain. Now, I know we're not going to be PSG. Luis Enrique is his own man, as is Mikel Arteta. But sometimes you see their centre mids occupied the fullbacks region when Hakimi's bombed forward. And likewise, where you look at, admittedly, when you was talking about Rice, where you look at their midfield three, their 6 at times is occupying 10 roles. I think we need more interchanging movement. Like, Gyökeres go out wide, Martinelli or whoever go centrally, do what, Zubimendi might be the furthest forward midfielder, Odegaard might be the deepest. I think we need a bit of street smartness. I think we need freedom within a framework. And I do think I need Mikel Arteta to kind of, especially if you're going to do this mad scientist stuff, which we all love, to kind of take a leaf out of Luis Enrique's book and just have a freedom within a framework. But to answer your question, yeah, man, I do think it's not necessarily that I want to see us just completely write off playing as an inverted, having inverted fullbacks and going back to the traditional sense. But we need to be able to pivot. It's like we find something new. It eventually works, like we saw with Zinni, and now we're at with Myles Lewis-Skelly, and we just ride it until the wheels fall off. We don't kind of mix and blend, and it's a double-edged sword because everything we've done has got us to this point. But we now need to evolve and be unpredictable. It's like it's a bit crazy in that. Come on, man. If you're a rival team,